Hi, this is Judith Cassel-Mam with another video tutorial for adventure journaling. Adventure journaling is an approach to journaling where you're capturing an experience using whatever media you have at hand, doing some writing, including some text, just having a really good time and feeling the freedom to work with a variety of materials. Today I want to show you how to alter photographs. Altering photos gives you an option of adding a layer to a journal page that utilizes just usually junky photos you have sitting around that you haven't thrown out yet. In this example, I prepared the page with some black gesso. I let the gesso just kind of brush on and I didn't fill it in there. I took an old photo that I had and I cut it with an X-Acto knife to separate these two halves. Then I used sandpaper to sand around the edges, and then I just did the collage technique where I just attached the photo onto the black gesso with a little bit of decorative paper. Then I took a paint pen, one of these pen touch pens, this one happened to be in silver, and I wrote over the photograph and the black gesso to get that layered effect. I'm going to show you the technique now that was used on the photograph here on this magazine image here, and then this was just a remnant, a piece that was sitting around using the same technique I'm going to show you, and that made its way onto my journal page as well. For this process, you just need a bunch of old photos that are sitting around kind of junky that maybe you should have thrown away but you didn't. And please remember, I'm working on photographic paper, photos that have been developed in a photo lab. This process does not work on photos that have been printed off on a home computer or at Kinko's. In other words, laser print even on good paper or inkjet on good paper will not work. So these are photos that have gone through the developing process. You can work your photos dry or wet or a combination. A way to alter your photo when it's dry is simply to rip away some of it, and if you pull towards yourself you end up with a white deckled edge there, and that white edge with the paper exposed is now going to take watercolor if you want, or chalks or ink, anything like that, but it's a nice porous piece of paper. So that's one technique. Another technique is simply to sand away part of your photo. I'm using sandpaper that's 220 grit or 200 grit. It doesn't really much matter, you can control that. By sanding away your edge, you distress the photo. Here's an example of a picture that was cut out with an X-Acto knife, and this surface just sanded, and it has that nice distressed look. Of course, it was a distressed building. Another way to work the photo dry that I like a lot is to simply crumple it and really do a good job pressing down on the wrinkles and the folds. This is all done while it's dry. Once you've crumpled it up and wrinkled it, then try sanding it. And as I'm sanding it, the high edges will get more of the texture. Here's an example using that same photo where I've sanded that section, ripped it out, and glued it onto a page that was prepared with some background text ripped out of an old book. And then I put some color around it. This was glued down, and I used a paint pen to do a journal on top of it. This is a picture of the other side of that photo where I simply turned it around and anchored it there. So this photo became a decorative textural element on those two pages. Another way to work the photo and alter it is to get the photo wet. This is kind of surprising because we've all kind of thought that photos should never get wet. But what happens if you soak them is that top layer that's protecting all the colors and the chemicals underneath softens up and now allows you to sand over that. I'll sand a little bit, and look how fast and easy it is to sand when the photo is wet. You can pretty much sand away large parts of the photo, and as you're sanding you're going to want to keep wetting it to get rid of the residue. Here's the sanded area. While it was wet, you can see how much faster that went. But another thing you could do with a wet photo, if you have a dark area like this, use an old mechanical pencil, and you can write and scratch in a journal entry right into the photo. So you can scratch in some decorative elements into the dark area of a photo, controlling it with your pencil. Here's a junky old photo. I probably should have thrown this away. Horrible posture. Watch what I'm going to do to the figure. Now I want to rinse it off. Oh look, I took off pounds. Here's another photo that is something I would probably soak and sand away, just leaving the bicycle and that wonderful shadow exposed. So when you soak your photo and sand it, if you sand on a surface that's bumpy or a table that's kind of dirty, that's how I got those textures coming out. So this has been soaked and sanded, and that's how I got that kind of bumpy texture. I'll show you a couple of other examples real quick. These are photos that were soaked and sanded on a bumpy surface. There you can see the values that changed. Here it is ripped. This was a totally different photo I had of these great stairs, but I didn't like what else was going on, so I cut that off, and then I used a Sharpie to highlight some areas. These areas were sanded. Right down here is where you see most of the sanding. The photo was ripped and attached again onto a black background with some decorative paper. My last example I want to show you is that the sanding technique works just fine on a magazine image as well. This was a magazine picture. I sanded the figure away from the whole door there, and then I just highlighted the ladder, and you can see the distressed image in the background kind of softens up the picture and allows me to draw and paint and work right on top of it. So that's it. A simple technique using a photograph, some sandpaper, and a little bit of water. I have additional techniques on my website. Feel free to check that out and come join me for an adventure journaling class if you're in the Denver metro area.